Hodgson put him on his back. Thurston, right foot kick, down the ground, into the in goal almost. Hodgson cuts it off. Hodgson taken by Norton. He took him late. Marshall skips away. Marshall's still going. Marshall's got Richards coming up outside. Now inside. Richards pursued. He pushes Johnson away.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, all and sundry. It is Monday. Yeah, you heard that right. It is Monday, the 5th of August, 2024. You're back with another but early episode of the Tiger Town podcast with your hosts, Zach and Toby. Brought to you, as always, by Best On Ground Digital, bestongrounddigital.com, the digital marketing agency that looks after the little guy. Toby, how you doing this evening, mate?
I'm thrown out of whack. Doing this on a Monday is a bit different.
You're on a Monday?
But, yeah, got to do what we got to do. Yeah, I don't even know what to say at the moment. You know, it's Tuesday. It's Monday, not Tuesday.
Yeah, we're in Monday mode, mate.
Yeah. I'm not as exhausted as I generally am, so that's different.
That's good. Well, we expect you to be jumping through hoops then in this podcast.
Oh, if I had a team that played fucking right, I would.
That wouldn't be too bad. We'll get to talking about the performance against the Cowboys very shortly. The reason that we're doing it, of course, on a Monday, not of course, but you're about to find out, of course, is that my wife currently is in very late stage pregnancy with our third, and it could go at any minute. And so I didn't want to jeopardise not getting the podcast out in case I was otherwise occupied tomorrow with number 3. So here we are, Monday. We're pre-team list, but we're definitely post-Cowboys game on Thursday last week. Mate, 30-48, we lost at Leichhardt Oval. 6 tries to 8 in the end. Obviously, that 8th being that last second intercept try they scored at the very end that wouldn't have happened in ordinary time. Mate, a lot to sort of unpack that happened in the game on the weekend. A lot of talking points, and we'll get to all of those. But what was your take on the game in general?
Well, I'm taking back what I said before because, I don't know, the team that I saw, very proud. Very proud of that team. Had every reason to give up. Every reason. I mean, it was another game, another Cowboys game that Chris Butler officiated and got it wrong. Again, even though he didn't really get it wrong. It was more, I think Ashley Klein was the bunker. But, yeah, we can talk a bit more about that later on. But for how long? 20, 23 minutes? Something along those lines? Maybe even more. Maybe even 33 minutes. We played with 12 men on the field.
Yeah, it was about half an hour. So it was the 50th minute, I think, or the 49th or something like that. Yeah.
And remember now that the average age of that team was dropped dramatically because of Olam getting sent off. So would have been 23 at the max.
Yeah.
Super proud. Super proud.
Yeah, look, you come away from that game really not knowing what to think. We can obviously be very dirty on that one decision that we'll talk about, probably to kick the show off because it's, again, another contentious Tigers decision that's been played out in the media. And given that it was a Thursday game last week, every man and their dog have had their free swing at it, and we're only getting to it 5 days later. So I understand that it's pretty much old news, but we'll touch on that in a minute. But the point I'm trying to make is that it's hard to get a read on or get a single feeling off the back of that game, given the circumstances that we both put ourselves in and that we found ourselves in. To your point, we lost the game by 18 points, but you've got a sense of feeling that you were proud of the team's effort, and that's probably very contextual. And I'd say that there's been a lot of games this year where that's the case. And it's very, very easy to take the easy option and say that when people are looking for positives in a team that's won 4 games every year for the last 3 years, that they're basically farting in the wind. And we need to look more objectively at how the team's actually going, which is woeful. But I think given the fact that we are committed to this long-term rebuild, we're doing it right in the right way. I think that we owe it to ourselves to be looking at context around games and to look at little things outside of the wins because we simply know where we sit. And we sit in a position as of right now where winning football games is quite the ask in and of itself. As low a point as what that is, that's the point that we're in. So we've just got to operate within the context of what we got. And it's hard to disagree with what you said, given the circumstances, given we played half an hour plus against the current top 8 side, top 4 chance at home. And we not only held them, we actually came back at them. That part was pleasing, as was the people who contributed to that game and part of our generation next, as it were, the types of players that we hope do lead us on that pathway to, a renaissance of sorts that many of us are not necessarily knowing, but more hoping is going to be a fait accompli, I guess, that we are going to improve.
Well, I mean, I think the perfect example of that is, again, the people that stood up when that decision was made. You know, I'd easily say everyone stood up, but the ones that really decided to, I guess, take the game by the balls, so to speak, were the guys that we're pinning our future on. It's not like they're, you know, a lot of them would probably still be in university right now. You know, you obviously know that the likes of the 18 and 19-year-olds would definitely be there, but the fact that we saw such grit and determination from that team, and the team that had, I guess, so many youngsters, not just in terms of age, but in terms of games of experience. I mean, you go through the team, and like, I'm just going through the team now, and like, you've got, my God, like, you take out Ollams and Staines, and you've probably got 50 games between 3 people there in terms of Buller, Alamalo, and Fartape. Then you got Galvin, and then Latu. Don't forget Latu copped a head knock in the first half. Didn't come back on.
Yep.
So, you know, just with that amount of experience on the field, and then the back row, like Porter and Sam. I mean, Sam's got more games than Porter does, and Porter's 27 years old. So, like, it's, you know, looking at that with everything that was stacked against us, how can you not walk away from that thinking, okay, there's something here? So, like, I've been critical of performances all year. We didn't win this game, but for quite a bit there, especially when we were down to 12, I actually thought we were going to come back and steal it. And I think we had every opportunity to. I think there was quite a few poor decisions in attack when we went left and should have gone right. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to argue. And you actually brought up the point about Latu. And we lost Latu at the 20th minute. And you could see on the weekend, in the short time that he played, once again, that, and I know that he missed a tackle or two, but you could see how hard he hit. And he put his body on the line a lot, and he's a solid defender. He picked up and smoked somebody. I can't remember who it was. Absolutely pile drove him into the ground.
I think it was Nanai.
Yeah. So I've got no problem with him being back on an edge. But if you look directly off the back of him going off for his HIA, which again was so disappointing given the timing of it. I think that one was called back though, wasn't it? That was when Val Holmes went through, I think, wasn't it? Just having a look around.
I think it was looked at, but I think it was still awarded.
Well, the first 3 tries were Dearden and then Tuolangi. So
Tuolangi scored on the wing.
What's that?
Tuolangi scored on the wing. It was a poor read by Porter.
Which try are you talking about, mate?
The one where Latu copped the head knock. Because he went in on Val Holmes and copped the hip of Val Holmes as he was passing to Tuolangi.
Yeah, I'm not sure that you're correct there. So if I'm looking back at the tries, Dearden scored the first one. You've got Appy defending out in Latu's spot already, which is at the 21st minute. So, and then Tuolangi scores 2 tries consecutively. One is off the little dabble of a kick from Drinkwater that goes in behind Staines, and the second one, Staines rushes up, misses, and then Tuolangi goes in the corner again. So I got the suspicion that on the knockout of Latu, it was actually no try. Anyway, regardless, the point I was trying to make is that once we lose him, we lost our halfback, and that was never spoken about. That's a huge thing, because not only is it obviously one of your key playmakers, it doesn't matter if he's 19, he's your halfback. He's the bloke who's given the job of steering the team around. But we saw on the edge how solid he was in defence. And what happened in the 10 minutes or 12 minutes after we lost Latu on our right defensive edge, they scored 3 tries on that right defensive edge. The first try was Dearden slicing through, which it was a comedy of errors. Samuela took the dummy from Robson, which means that he was slow to move to his right. You then have Porter, who was half a foot backwards, who then had to cover and come in for a little bit, which meant that he had to drift off. He had to drift inward off Dearden, and Appy was very wide, which means he didn't have the space to then cover in. That was the bugger around that. And then it was just the decision-making, essentially, of Staines getting it all wrong twice in a row.
Oh, that was so bad.
And that's going to come down to, once you lose a key person in your edge, straight away you lose trust. And who is, for all his princely features, and as much as we love him, who's the worst defender in our side? It's Coruscant. And Coruscant was then defending 3 in. He misses more tackles than anybody in our side. It's not it's daylight second. And you have to go a long way to find a person who we think gives more to the club than Appy. This is not a slight on Appy, but if you're going to tell me that Staines' decision-making, knowing that two men inside him, you've now got Appy instead of Gavin Latu, who you would have trained all week with the trust that he's a solid defender. That changes things. And we saw that edge fell to bits in the 10 to 12 minutes straight after Latu goes off. That's back to a luck thing as well. But we can't just bemoan, I guess, everything that went wrong in that regard. Let's jump. What I mentioned earlier, let's jump to that decision. We should say, put up something. I think I put that up on the Saturday, which was a still that shows the point of impact where Olam made contact, and you can actually see that Lukey's chin is actually over the shoulder of Olam. So Olam comes up, and Lukey's, if you're watching on YouTube, if Olam's shoulder is my fist, it comes up, and Lukey's chin at the point of impact is over the top of his shoulder, nearly touching his number. Now that's impossible if Olam gets him flush in the chin. What I will say is the rules actually say head and neck. So it doesn't matter that he didn't get him flush in the chin. And I made sure I went and checked that. It explicitly says head and neck. So there's not a whole lot of a case there. But what I would argue is that if you look at the stipulations around what constitutes a sent-off and what constitutes a sin bin, generally speaking, you would say that a reckless is what they would term to be reckless, which is complete disregard for somebody's safety, as opposed to careless, meaning you took a poor risk and you shouldn't have taken that risk. You'd probably argue that would be sin bin versus send-off, being the reckless one being a send-off. That in no way was. We're Tigers fans. We're never going to say it is. I would have been perfectly happy with the sin bin. And
I wouldn't be happy with it, but I would have agreed with it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. In terms of comparing what the outcome is, yeah, you would have been just like annoyed again that a senior player did something to cost ourselves. But yeah, I'm not going to beat that to death. It's been done to death. It essentially just comes down to the fact that how you interpret it, I guess. You can make an argument that it is a send off, but I don't think it's a very strong one, and neither does the club because they're challenging it at the judiciary.
Yeah, well, here's the thing that and again, it is open for interpretation in terms of who is adjudicating that game. But you have a look at something else, and I said this in our chat either yesterday or the day before, or probably yesterday because it was the Knights game. But there was 3 or 4, maybe even 5 incidences that were identical, if not worse, than that one that was given a send-off. One was given a sin bin. One.
Yeah.
The rest were given penalties and placed on report. And everyone's like, oh, but because Olam's shorter and, Lukey got up. Lukey didn't even go off straight away. He went off after about 10 minutes.
He did go off for a HIA eventually, but yeah, it wasn't straight away, that's for sure.
Wasn't straight away. He passed it. Flying colours.
Yep.
And that's the most ridiculous. For me, it was Another case of setting an example that these NRL referees seem to do, and they don't seem to do it against the clubs that have a chance of playing, like, obviously finals football, because it could hamper their preparations or whatever. So they'll set an example against the ones like us. Like, oh, we've got nothing to play for. Of course we got fucking something to play for. We don't want a third straight wooden spoon. But, this is what they do. And it was, again, another fantastic decision, even though he wasn't directly the one that made the decision. From Chris Butler, we all remember what Chris Butler decided to do 2 years ago when we played the Cowboys.
Yeah, no
So-
comment.
So
No comment.
even Tony Adams, the mole, actually defended us on that, which is insane because he never does anything, any way, shape, or form.
He's actually openly admitted that he doesn't like the Tigers because of what they did to Tim Sheens.
Yeah.
Now, look, before we start talking about positives, because I think that's the best way to put a spin on it as we march towards the back end of the year. We're seeing a lot of positives, and there are a lot of positives there on the weekend again. So we will get to that 100%. Before we do, that right edge was just diabolical. The tries that they scored in the second half too. The short one down the blind side after they made the covering tackle, that should never have been a try because Staines doesn't get back up off the ground. And Fatape gets stuck 2-on-1 where he passes it back to, I think it was Tuolangi, he passed it back, who played the ball and they scored. And then Drinkwater comes around on the edge as well when Appy misses another tackle out in that edge. So what hasn't been spoken about, I'll throw back to the Latu thing. There is 5 tries that came on that side, on that right edge. So either that right edge is a mess or, the right edge is a mess. Better make that 6 because I've got the highlights there playing there now. That's why I'm fresh in my mind. But there's 6 because Valentine Holmes slices through, and then what do we see? Fatape miss a 1-on-1 tackle, and they go through again. They scored all 6 of that. Their first 6 tries, with the exception of that last try, were scored down that side where we lost our halfback and we had Appy filling in. And whether or not Appy makes the tackles, like I said before, it creates doubt in his inside and outside men, which they just, to their credit, they just kept coming back and doing it. I guess it's a sign of a smart football side, but how frustrating, isn't it?
But was that the one that you're talking about there when Val Holmes skipped through? Was that the one that was deemed a non-obstruction, even though he ran through the space that was created by a forward?
It was, yeah. So that was the one where Appy got checked on his way through. Which
it didn't take a dive. If he had taken a dive, that would have been a penalty.
It should have been anyway. That was, as much as it didn't tremendously impede him, even the commentators were saying he made contact. You cannot run to the outside shoulder and make contact. He made contact. That's a cut and dry penalty to the Tigers and obstruction. And the irony again is that you talk about that try and you talk about the try at the very end that Galvin wouldn't have thrown the pass if we weren't in desperate situation where Felt scores. It ends up 6 tries apiece then, if that's the case. For all that went wrong and everything else as well. And look, mate, that's the case or the story of the year. Like, I went back again and looked at our results. And beside a couple of, the Sharks one was a shocker, the Dragons one was a shocker, and they're more recent times. But over the course of this year, as we've said in past podcasts, this side doesn't feel like they've played well in more than maybe 2 or 3 games at most. But they've been within 2 tries of the vast majority of games this year. And this is another situation where it's 18 points, but it's 2 tries, and it most likely would have been 0 tries difference and maybe some goal kicking again. I keep saying that this team is not that far off, but the problem is they don't play well enough, often enough, for us to see what they can do. When have they done it this year? They did it against the Sharks and they did it against Canberra. I'd probably argue they're the only games that we've actually played well for the game.
Yeah.
2 games the whole year, as in played to our potential. And look what happened. So it is hard to get a gauge, and I think that's where there's still this underlying groundswell of positivity heading to the future. At least one point of it is that you would like to think at some point it is the coaching team's responsibility, but that this team could start to actually put performances together. It's not going to be this year, but I guess, mate, we're hoping for next year, right?
Absolutely. And I hate the fact that I have to regurgitate him, but Paul Crawley actually wrote something yesterday where he actually beefed us up. And this is a bloke who he's one of those reporters, or let's do that in air quotes when I say journalists / reporters, who feels the need to bash us when we're down all the time, no matter what. Like his whole Steph situation, all that jazz, said that we were the, what did he say? Babies throwing our toys out of the cot or something like that.
Oh, he did it again today. A complete write-up where basically he just made fun of the fact. We had a crack at Richo, and then he's had another crack at us today about patting Stefano on the back for going and playing, as in well done, and what choice
Yeah, I
do you
did read
have
that,
but
actually.
to leave, and like just an absolute spastic that does not understand that the Tigers have an alternate perspective on how to view Stefano, and basically giving it to the fans that dared to boo him. No idea. Absolutely no idea. You would go a long way, and I include every sports journalist or NRL journalist in this. You'd go a long way to find someone with less football knowledge, particularly when it pertains to our club, or the ability to look at things from a 360-degree perspective than Paul Crawley. I'm stunned that he's able to put a coherent sentence together. It's mind-boggling.
Well, he did put a bit more of a coherent sentence that I read there, where he was like, regardless if we lost, you have to be excited for what's coming if you include someone like a Jerome Luai and a Taruva. And I was like, I had to double check that. Maybe it wasn't even Paul Crawley, because maybe I've got everything mixed up, but I swear I double checked to make sure it was Paul Crawley.
That was my suspicion. So that was a Fox Sports article, I think, that came out, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Today. Yeah, and they went through and they did a bit of a rundown, and they spoke essentially about takeaways from the weekend, as they tend to do.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Was
What
that
was it
Paul
called?
Crawley?
Woes mask scary revival brewing at Tigers. This, I dare say, no, it wasn't Paul Crawley. It was
Well, there you go.
a series
Well, then
of
I won't
Fox
base
Sports.
on
Yeah, no. Series of Fox Sports articles. I won't mention their names. You wouldn't have heard of many of them, I would assume. But I'll just
it.
give the brief cliff notes for anybody who hasn't caught it. Interesting, because it was a very pro Tigers angle off the back of that Cowboys loss, which is odd. I unfortunately have to look at Shane Flanagan's strange gummy smile as I scroll down, but here we go. The title is "The Future's Bright at Tigers Despite Current Woes." So it says, yes, they lost convincingly to the Cowboys. I'd argue not convincingly, especially considering the situation. Yes, Stefano and Papali'i are leaving, and John Bateman may well follow them. But make no mistake, something special is brewing at the West Tigers. This is a Fox Sports journalist that's written this, so I know the world's been crazy for the last 5 or so years, but this is happening.
This is happening.
And then they go on to talk about Luai arriving, Sania Tuvaruva arriving, Tito, and all the juniors as well that are coming through, and mention quite a few of them by name, and actually list all their ages, with Sione Fainu being the oldest one there at 23. So, yeah, it is an interesting read. Mate. Let's move on from the negatives, because we've been justifiably negative for quite a while again now, given the run that we've been on. But there was some positives in that game, and I know, folks, that we're getting a bit tired, and I'm sure you are, of hearing about silver linings and positives in the face of runs of losses, especially with all the goodwill that the Dragons and Bulldogs are getting at the moment with their turnaround stories, and we're still left languishing. However, I think at the moment the best case scenario for us, or the best path forward, is to trust in the process. I know that sounds you've heard that before, but and have a look at what positives we do have moving forward. So, mate, let's jump on in to lift and sink on the weekend. Who did you like? Who's playing well? Who's in good form? Whose form are you enjoying? And who's are you a little bit concerned about? Give me a sink first.
Oh, a sink first. Clemmer.
Okay.
Largely unsighted when we needed him to stand up. Granted, he didn't get back on until I think maybe the 70th minute, maybe the 72nd minute.
Yeah, he only played 36 minutes, which was 7 less than Steph. 8 runs for 74 metres in that time. And
27 tackles. No, wait. Yeah. 22 tackles with 1 miss.
Yeah, at 95. So still tackling well. Look, he's a bit part player now, isn't he? He's every bit a 350 to 450 third or fourth string prop. and he probably
Absolutely.
does. He probably does that role. The problem is for me is that speculating, he was on a healthy contract at the Knights, and they subsidised for year one, but he moved over on the contingency, or on the condition, I should say, as far as I understand, that he was still going to get another couple of years of a semi-decent contract. You would probably think that that would be 650, 700.
Yeah.
And scarily, possibly a little more. You would like to think that that's not the case, but not really the output with those sort of numbers, mate.
No, not at all. And he was definitely one that I think I said last week that potentially my bold prediction was he was going to have a blinder to stand up and show that we don't need Steph. I felt he did almost the opposite. I felt that Steph outshone him, which annoyed me, but yeah, he's definitely my sink for this week. So
Yeah, okay. I threw your sink at you first because I knew that we were about to spin positive, and so didn't want to interrupt the positivity with the sink, and I knew you'd have a lift ready. So, mate, I'll throw a sink. I'll throw a stink, lift and stink this week. I'm loving what Charlie Staines is doing in terms of his efforts out of the backfield. I think I mentioned it last week. He's really putting his body on the line. He's getting over the advantage line better than anybody in our back five at the moment. Bottom line, he is doing it. That's irrefutable. But yeah, and like I mentioned earlier, his decision making in defence was abhorrent on the weekend. In his defence, he wasn't alone, and like I mentioned earlier, that side fell apart once they lost one of their key members, and that does things. Like I've said many times before, as a centre, when I played, when you have somebody different pop into that combo on your edge, things do change. Whether consciously or subconsciously, you do change his decision making, and we saw him try to overcompensate a couple of times and rush in and get it all wrong, and led directly to 2 tries. So, yeah, I'm not going to really dwell on that too much, but for me, we can't be giving soft tries like that and like we gave away. For the most part, we were numbered up on those, and then later in the game, when we see that he actually holds his man, lo and behold, Val gets on the outside of Fatape, and Fatape misses 1-on-1. So that's what's been happening with us lately, is that we make a few poor, rushed, hasty decisions on our edges, and we'll rush in early. We get it wrong, and then we're spooked. And then it happened with Dewey a few weeks back. And after Fatape came in and made a couple of poor errors, he then hung out and let Dewey take his man. And I think it was Manu gave him, expectedly, an absolute bath. So, yeah, we just can't win on our edges at the moment. And it's not Charlie Staines' fault, but, yeah, he deserves a bit of a rap over the knuckles for a couple of those decisions, even though he is definitely putting in. Can't fault him on that.
Yeah, he's definitely got the excuse me. He's definitely got the energy that we need out of that backfield, but it's the same situation almost every single week. And whether also that comes down to the fact that he's played with a few different centre pairings, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But
not only that, not only centres, different halves, different second rowers. And I know that he's a few men out, but edges work as a unit. And one person getting it wrong has a flow-on effect. And if you don't see that, that's okay. But if you've played football, and you've played football particularly on an edge, you understand that it microseconds make every piece of difference, and you've got to be in tune. And yeah, so whether suspensions or injuries or whatnot, that's hard, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, and like you said, there's myriad of factors, but there's still you still need to take ownership. And there was a couple like that one where he came in and we were literally numbered up. Like if he held his man, it's not his fault, but he tried to be the superhero, and he wasn't quick enough to make that happen. And it was just a beautiful tap on. I think was it Drinkwater? Maybe it was Holmes. Can't remember. But it was just he didn't need to jam in any way, shape, or form. There was no need for it. It was like watching Noffa.
I think it was actually no, I won't speculate. Yeah, you're right. It was either Holmes or Drinkwater. I have a feeling it was Holmes sweeping around the back, but it may well have been Drinkwater. I know Drinkwater did put the kick in behind for one of them. Yeah. All right, mate. Well, let's jump into who you're lifting, because there were some good performances on the weekend, obviously from our side, and yeah, like we've said, there's some silver linings there and some positivity around it, despite the fact that we obviously again didn't get the win. Mate, who are you gonna lift this week?
Mate, it's going to be hard to go past Buller. Very hard to go past Buller.
You went for
He
the
was
easy option, did you?
absolutely, absolutely. He was so dangerous in attack. I will fault him a little bit. I would have liked to have seen him have a bit more urgency in defense. I feel like sometimes he just coasts a little bit too much. But we know what his acceleration is like, so he probably coasts and he's pretty comfortable he can get there in time. But in attack, my God, it looked like every time they did that swing to the right, for at least 4 or 5 sets in a row, we made a break.
You know what I liked about Buller on the weekend, amongst other things, and then he took his
Everything.
chances, is it looked like when he approached contact, he approached that in a completely different way than we've seen for the most part. It seems as though to me somebody has told him two things: one, straighten and accelerate, and then accelerate into contact. And it was noticeably different. And we saw with what happened in the way that he scored his tries and the way he made his line breaks.
Yeah.
Just that ability to, rather than look like he's jogging, and then sort of float between them, he was accelerating, trying to punch through between defenders, and that was noticeably. He was so dangerous, mate, wasn't he?
So dangerous.
And you talk about for a long time, you were a bit of a in the early days. He's only been around for over 12 months, 18 months. You spoke a lot about his support play, and how that's an area that he needed to develop. Mate, that Ruben Porter run and then support up the middle.
Oh, so good.
Mm.
So good. Like, I was watching that when they showed the replay, and he made that break. And how good was that break, by the way?
Yeah.
And I was watching that, and when that does happen, you tend to see Buller kind of, he's either on the other side of the field expecting something else to happen, not really finding, like, floating in between around the ruck or anything like that. And he was right there. And it's like, the person who does that the absolute best in this game at the moment is Pappy. And it looked like just a Pappy moment. Just in the middle, just expecting something.
Sniffing around.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you can see there as well. So as Porter goes through and pops that pass, beautiful, by the way. And I want to talk a little bit about a couple of the guys who have come into the side this year and how they looked a bit different on the weekend, because there was a few that looked different. And I've got a suspicion about that, but he's sitting on the inside of that ruck, and as you're saying, he's just floating, just for the off chance that an opportunity arises, and he's ready to go. And you mentioned Pappenhausen; he gets into open field, Buller, casual. He knows where Drinkwater is. He knows the speed on him, and he makes a decision, turns, goes, beats him on the outside, and you can tell it means a bit to him. You can tell that he's in that.
Yeah, that ball's throw to the ground.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him show that much emotion.
And in the first half, when he slices through right on half time, he gets up, emphatic, and yells, "Let's go." Like, it's good to see him get pumped up and start to believe himself a little bit, I think, because being such a quiet, humble kid, he doesn't have, that sort of brash overconfidence that a lot of the younger superstars, like a Reece Walsh, for example, has.
Oh, you just took the name right out of my mouth.
Feature. Well, mate, you took Buller, so...
well, now you have to find another one.
Yeah, I've got to go fishing now.
But first off, before you do that...
Yeah.
You said there's a few people that played a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And you had a theory behind that.
Yeah.
That intrigued me. I want to know that before we move on. What's your theory?
Yeah, so there's probably more, but the three that I noticed played different were Ruben Porter, Jareem Buller, and Solomon Fatape. And
I agree.
And the reason they played differently for different reasons, my theory is that they've been told to go and play their natural game. And I know that sounds really cliched, but the way that they played on the weekend was markedly less safe than it appears that they have been coming into grade. And I've said this a number of times before. I think a lot of young players, when they come in, and I know Porter's 27, but he's still an inexperienced first grader. When they come in, they just want to do their job and they don't want to make mistakes, and they want to make sure they don't stuff up their opportunity. It looked to me on the weekend, the way Fatape took Holmes on a few times, And I know that he has his issues with defence. I know that he's not a complete player. I'm not saying he was even fantastic for Tape, but he played different and he took a few people on, and we saw him shred Holmes there for a try. Porter especially, though. He's clearly been told, mate, you got an offload, which coming through New South Wales Cup, playing last year for Norths, he was prolific. And his running game as well. Use your footwork. I want to see you play some football. And Jareem, it was the case of what we spoke about before.
Yeah.
So being told, mate, take the line on more, run harder into contact, all this sort of stuff as well. And it looks to me like the shackles are off a little bit with some of those less experienced players. And that's exciting because I would like that to be the status quo moving forward. And I think these guys just need to believe it. And look, my lift is Ruben Porter because I don't know that many casual observers would have seen that coming in him, given what we've seen so far. You know, he's done a good job. He's been good value for money. Certainly a lot better value for money than a lot of other players. But people that have watched him in New South Wales Cup toil for the last few years would know that he's a try scorer and a running threat on the edge and has a great offload. And we just hadn't seen it. He'd been out there making his tackles and taking his hit-ups. But the fact that he took a few chances on the weekend, whether they came off or not, and they happened to in this situation, really impressive to see. And it makes us a more dangerous team. And teams that are more dangerous win field position for the most part. They score more points, obviously. But all that stuff plays into less time defending. It plays into where you're positioned on the field territory-wise. It's all positive in terms of momentum and whatnot too. So I'm hoping that style of football that we saw from a couple of those guys, and you're welcome to share if you saw it a bit different, but I'm hoping we see a little bit more of that.
No, I definitely saw that. I definitely, more from Tape, I definitely saw that. That's kind of what I saw from the highlights of when he was playing for Easts last year. This really strong running game, backing himself, backing his ability.
Yep.
And that's definitely, I saw a lot more of that. And like you said, he's got a lot of things to work on still. I still think he could do with a bit more time in New South Wales Cup, but if that's what we're seeing from him in attack, then I'm very happy for him just to work on his defense, and that's it. So.
Honourable mention has to go to Lockie. Didn't stop trying all night. Through a couple of great passes. Sam Weller just, in some ways was kind of quiet, I guess, but also the lines that he's running are just getting better and better and better and better. And how is that happening? The kid's into his first year and he's 20 years of age. Quite incredible. There was more out there, but the adversity that happened in that game can't be understated. It can't be. We lost 12 throughout the game as well. We lost our halfback after 20 minutes. We played 30 minutes with 12 men. We had a hooker playing out in the halves. We had all the youth that we've got out there, as we spoke about.
We had a debutant on.
Yeah, of course. We had a debutant. Yeah, absolutely. A debutant there coming off the bench. And just watching there Sam Weller's try off the dropout as well.
Yeah.
Backing
Forgot
ourselves.
about that.
Yeah, backing ourselves. And that might be a case as well. And I'm sure that's been a message over the course of the year. Benji seems like that type of coach, but obviously it was clear to me that it hit home big time on the weekend because they just seem to play a little bit different. But anyway, there's my lift, mate. Have you got anybody else you wanted to mention or talk about or anything else in regards to that game?
Not really expanding on that, but I feel that I'm starting to feel like Alex Twelve's becoming a bit more of an excess than than we need. I think you've said at the start of the year, you said it, he's just becoming a bit of a plotter. And I said it maybe a couple of months ago. The one thing we could always depend on him was his defense. I don't even know if we can depend on that anymore. He made some poor reads again. Showed a bit of laziness in the middle. Congratulations! I just heard he had a new bub, so good on him. He's probably been thinking about that a bit. But
I will say, on the weekend he did tackle with 100%. But as we've said many times before, that doesn't take into consideration defensive decisions, which is arguably, as the Bulldogs are showing, more important than actual missed tackles themselves.
Yeah. So which is disappointing because I love Twoley, but we're at that point where there's just too many excess. There's too much excess. There's too much of those people that just are average. Is the best way to put that, and I guess that's just comes down to also what we have in terms of our injury clouds and our injuries and things like that. But
yeah,
I just feel like we obviously got flogged in New South Wales Cup by a team that is one spot above us, who we beat 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago.
Flogged them 3 weeks ago.
And so obviously our depth is still quite poor.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is what it is.
It is what it is. Richo did mention in that interview last week in the Behind the Raw podcast that is something that they're very aware of and they're going to look to fix into next year. Got no doubt there's going to be a massive recruitment drive. Once again, I don't want to explain away failures, but it's hard to read too much into the junior systems coming through. Not just the junior system, but the reserve grade in particular, because Flegg has largely been left alone for the most part this year. That being said, plenty that are eligible and playing first grade, or even reserve grade for that matter, are out of the Flegg squad. The Flegg squad have been doing okay considering. But outside of that, the New South Wales Cup side, they would have been lucky to name, the same players next to each other anywhere on the squad at any point this year. It's been, all over the shop. And that's been one part because the first grade side has been deplorable at times as well, and we've needed to shake it up. It's been one part because the first grade side have had woeful discipline and we keep losing key players all the time. And it's another part because the first grade side has had tremendous levels of injuries. I know all sides get injuries. We've been smashed. Smashed. I would love to go, actually, I wouldn't love. I would hate to go back and look game by game at all the injuries that have come out of each game over the course of the year and how cyclical it is. Well, again on the weekend, we had Latu, who was Category 1, who's now out again from this game. So once again, we don't get a chance to see him play a full football game. But Twal, who had a dislocated finger that they couldn't get back in, so you would suspect they would at least put him in doubt, possibly, for a quick turnaround. That's
probably a compound fracture.
That's what he got, was it, in the end?
It probably was. If it's a dislocated finger that won't go back in, that's pretty fucked.
Oh, yeah, it's hard to say. But, and so I think we might have even had another injury or whatnot as well. Pole missed on the weekend because of a broken rib. He'll be out for a while. We've got...
did he get a broken rib, did he?
Yeah.
Oof. I thought it was just bruised.
But on the weekend prior.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he's out for...
Yeah. Our backline stocks are still, how you going? So, look, once again, I'm not trying to explain away failures, but context matters. And, if the New South Wales Cup side fielded their best side from the start of the year and were able to stay consistent over the course of the year with the odd little change, they might have only got 4 or 5 spots off the bottom of the New South Wales Cup ladder, but they certainly would not be the worst side in the comp by a country mile because there's some good players in there, but it does need to be strengthened. And there are reasons and context around why that side has looked so awful. I mean, awful at times this year.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not as worried about that. You look at the Roosters, how good for the most part the Roosters are going, and then you look at where their New South Wales Cup side is too. So
that's true. It's funny that you say that.
Doesn't always translate.
It's funny that you say that. You'd love to go, or you'd hate to go back and have a look at all the injuries. I sent something to the chat about all the sim bins we'd had, and this is literally game by game how many sim bins we've had. So this is either due to poor discipline or it is an overreaction and it's the wrong call. So you had in round 2, Steph got sim binned for dissent. So we were losing that game against the Raiders and he just basically told the ref to fuck off. In round 4 against the Eels, Galvin got sent on sim bin for a hip drop.
I'll add as well that dissent in that sort of context or that situation is entirely discretional. Unless someone is out there calling the ref something pretty heavy to their face. People swearing in frustration. I don't know what Steph said. People swearing in frustration, I think, as you said, can often be overreaction. I don't know. I can't remember whether that was or not, but yep.
Yeah, and then you got, and then we went a few games without one, which was interesting. And then round 8, when Sam decided to tackle Corey Oates when he was running out of the in goal.
Misunderstanding?
misunderstanding,
thought he
but
could have been played.
still a professional foul.
Yep.
And then in the Bulldogs game, when we had some of the worst refereeing I've ever seen in my life, in Casey Badger, Clemmer got sin bin for dissent, but he was clearly frustrated because it was very poor refereeing. And then
You recall after the fact, though, that the audio that came out about that?
No, I can't remember.
Yeah, that he basically said that wasn't a shoulder charge, and didn't even curse.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's not fair.
Anyway, I don't want to make this a witch hunt about the Tiger tax, as it is.
Yeah, I'm just going through them to give you context.
I'm saying for me, I'm not going to keep as you go through them. I'm not going to keep explaining them all the way. Carry on. Sorry, mate.
There was Seyfarth got for throwing handbags because of Marnie. I think Marnie the Pest got another one. Buller in round 10 for when I think the tackle was completed and he stripped the ball. Just a silly play. So this is at round 10. We are already at 8 sin bins by round 10. So think about that. We've had to play basically, what's that? What, round 2, round 4, round 8, round 9, round 10. 50% of our games at that point in time, actually probably less because we had a bye round 1, with at least 12 men on the field for 10 minutes. Think about if none of this would have happened. Then you had,
it's more than that though, because what is it, 15 over the year plus a send off?
You had Naden in round 11 for being an absolute twat and hitting him high on the ground. Can't remember who he hit. I think it was Asako. Then you had Olam in the same game for that hip drop where momentum stopped and he actually hit him.
Terrible.
So again, and then from there it was just either stupid decisions. So you had Sullivan in round 14 for that professional foul, just pulling him back when he try scoring position. Seyfarth for another professional foul where he basically blocked the quick tap from Levi, and that Todd Smith decided that was enough. And then from there was about 4 or 5 that were wrong. So you had Appy for lifting, wasn't even above horizontal, got sin binned. You had Dewey for the hip drop when momentum stopped again, didn't even fall on the back of his legs. He stayed down. You had Tape for that jump, or for blocking them, in a try scoring position. Whether you think that's fair or not, I think that's up for speculation. But then Appy for not square, the worst one all year, that was wrong. Caesar for that hip drop, that was just Caesar.
Do you remember Sam McIntyre making a tackle on, was it Appy or was it Talon? I think it was on Talon in the game last Thursday. Sam McIntyre was standing next to the player who was playing the football, and we didn't. We didn't get a penalty for it.
No, and I remember, and Talon sitting there going, like, Talon sat there and went, "Are you joking?" And then I think Talon gave away a penalty, and he's looked directly at the ref and just went, "What can we do?" And then Olam, obviously, for that high shot, sin bin, not a send off.
Yeah.
So
this season, and I'm not going to say that we're deliberately targeted in that sense, but this season, we've given ourselves no hope.
No.
I'm going to put it back on them, and like everybody else is, and probably rightly so. And I don't take this angle all the time because I think there's often mitigating circumstances. And I've got a little healthy dose of the victim mentality, which when you're down the bottom for so long, it's a bit hard to avoid.
It's ingrained.
It is ingrained. I don't think the side deliberately goes out there to be poorly disciplined, but I think it's a reflection of where the side is in their ability levels across the park. And I keep coming back to the ruck. I'd like to know how many of those are in some way, if not primarily, linked to ruck issues, at least secondarily or tertiarily linked, in that we haven't been able to control the ruck all year. We've been woeful at it. And that has so many lead-ons that lead them to trying to put a big hit on Ella on the weekend, as in trying to turn a bit of momentum defensively and getting it wrong. We have people, if we're not controlling momentum in and around that ruck, they're getting a roll on, they're getting over the advantage line. We have people that are trying to bring down post-contact meters on a team that is moving forward. They've been dropping into hip drops because they haven't been able to control that contact or control the wrestle. That's why they're doing that, because they're trying to quickly hold the momentum of somebody that they lost the contact or the impact point with. And even still just looking about how frustration can creep into the game with poor decision-making. And once again, you're going to get increasingly frustrated if you're always backpedaling because your side is not winning the contest. No, you're not winning whether it's the ruck wrestle itself that was spoken about or that initial contact. I think that can be linked to that a lot. But, this side is going to go nowhere. We've said this before. It's going to go nowhere. Doesn't matter who arrives next year. If they can't figure out how to, obviously win that ruck a little bit better and be able to manipulate momentum with their defence better, but just rein in these mistakes. And it's not even just sin bins and penalties. It's all sorts of mistakes.
Oh, absolutely.
We've joked and waxed lyrical all year about how it's almost impressive how inventive they get at finding new ways to shoot themselves in the foot. Like Papali'i on the weekend, when the Cowboys were all tremendously offside, which is a textbook sin bin, of course, they didn't get it. Instead of passing out wide, he runs straight at somebody who was 2 metres in front of Butler, by the way, and never got even close to one side. He was the one who made the try-saving tackle on Papali'i. But just decisions like that, where, you're just giving yourself and your team no opportunity to get back into the game. How many times have we dropped the ball over the line this year? And now we're coming into away from decisions and back to execution. So there's a bunch of things that the side needs to fix heading into next year. But I've been rather bullish on the fact, and the weekend just gone gave me no reason to think otherwise, that there is a good side in here, but we've just got to get out of our own way.
Yeah. Yeah, even Richo said it in the podcast, in that Behind the Raw podcast, where we continue to shoot ourselves in the foot. Now, whether that is due to the fact that, youthful inexperience, I guess you could say, is basically, what's holding us up at the moment, which means you're bound to make the wrong decision at least half the time because you haven't had enough time to understand the flow of a game. And that's understandable. Or because you have these people in the team that are quote unquote dumb footballers. So,
the concern there when I see that though, and this worries me, and it goes back to coaching, is that two of the biggest bonehead plays that I can remember in recent memory is anything involving AJ Kapoa, but especially that stuff with the robbery against the Cowboys when he gave Butler the chance to take it off us by running into Felt. And then Junior Pauga, who cost us with that dropout where he touched the ball inside the 10 metres where it would have been our penalty when he was playing for us. Those players are gone. So it doesn't matter if we're getting rid of these quote-unquote dumb footballers that have had absolute howlers. We still keep finding new people and new ways to do it. John Bateman, how experienced is, and I know that he's gone now for, most likely, I think, his Tigers career is done. But
apparently he's at a good club now.
He's at. Oh, I'm happy for him.
Stay over there then.
Rewind 2 weeks ago, and after scoring points, after getting back into the game, he's throwing first tackle offloads or first set offloads where we lose the ball again. So it's not news that we shoot ourselves in the foot in that regard, but in regards to dumb players, we keep finding new ways to infect other players with this dumb decision-making, at least in recent memory. So I don't know what the fix is to that. Obviously, the easy one would be, try to weed out low IQ players, to your point, but I worry that coaching is not playing enough of a role in those areas as perhaps maybe it should. It's hard to say.
Well, here's the thing that's concerning, and when we talk about coaching and things like that, I'm just going to go on a little bit of a veer there in terms of one thing that has been obviously very much, I guess, a focal point the last 6 weeks is how many points we are conceding every single round. And I think it's now 5 weeks in a row we've conceded over 40. John Morris is our defensive coach. So he's there for a little bit longer. That's concerning to me.
Yeah, look, it is. But again, how much of that is down to structures and how much is down to personnel? I see a lot of the tries that we gave away, and I can't remember the game, and it was very recently. It may have even been the Warriors last week. But I remarked something along the lines of we had to work really hard for our tries, and the opposition fell ass backwards into theirs, and we just gifted it. Was it? Yeah, it was last week, I think. Was it the Warriors where Luke Leala'li'i had a shocker and fumbled and bumbled too that led directly to tries? Was that Warriors or was that was Rabbits, wasn't it?
That was Rabbits.
It was the Rabbitohs game. I think that's the one I was talking about. And that's not structures and stuff. And it just seems like, again, this year we've had situations where that has been the case often. I actually think, and it's a paradox based upon what we saw on the weekend on our edges and what the blowtorch I've already applied to Charlie Staines et al. on the edge, on our right defensive edge on the weekend. But I actually think, for the most part, our structures in general have looked better. The problem is it's hard to see the forest for the trees there because of the personnel that are in those structures and all the changes that we've had within those structures. I would say that our defence, mostly at most times this year, when it is cohesive and together, looks a lot better than what it did Madge era with Nofaluma on a wing, for example. Which at one point it just seemed if anybody went to an edge, we were gone. Now it's more of a case of, well, is the halfback the same as the halfback from last week, or did he get a head knock this week, or who's in there, or who's on this side? Is Bateman out injured, or is he in England? Who's at the edge this week? And then we've got Fa'atape who's in there, and he's got his defensive issues, which is a problem, which creates trust issues for Staines outside him. So I hear what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying. Look, for me, I would much rather. It sounds weird. I know it sounds weird. I would much rather our attack be firing and our defence need some work than our defence be firing and our attack being woeful.
Yeah, true.
I know that's probably contentious and it's not what rugby league in some ways is built on, but for me, it's easier to fix defence than it is to fix attack. And I think we've got the attacking weapons. Just got to learn how to tackle, and we need some people that know how to tackle. Because what we certainly do have, and I raised this a couple of weeks ago, is we've got desperation within our ranks. When I spoke about Steph last week and we gave him the fair toasted cheese grilling off the back of his decision, and we're not going to open that up again because we've done it. I spoke about who the players are that are there in cover defence every time. And Samuela Fainu, Lachlan Galvin, and to a lesser degree, it's been Pole often. The core group of this squad has the defensive desperation within them. They've just got to improve it. Bottom line, and some other parts within that defence, I think can improve into next year. But I'm not with you on writing Morris off yet. But yeah, look, leaking 40 points like that is concerning. But once again, we are where we are.
Context to it.
There's context to it, and you look at who's playing and the youth and the age and experience of the people that we have in there, the combinations that have been changed and uplifted and everything else as well. And we're going with sides. I'm going to outwardly apologise to the listeners who, like us, and believe me, we fucking get it, that all we want is wins, even a couple. Like it absolutely pulls the soul out of your back door, just going into game after game after game and just coming out with loss after loss after loss. We get it. Like, believe us. Nobody gets it more than us. We get it. But I'm not doing my job on this end of the microphone if I'm not putting a positive spin on things. And as much as I'm doing it for you and for people listening, and you like to remain positive as best we can, I'm doing it for myself. Because I have to believe that this club is going somewhere. I have to believe that the squad moves that we're trying to make are for the betterment of the club. I have to look at the youth coming through and try to find the positives around where I think they can fit into our future systems and what their skill set is going to bring to our club as we move forward. Because if I don't, then I fall out of love with football.
Yeah.
And when it's such a big part of my life, the thing that keeps me coming back is that hope and the looking towards that the positive spin on things that we're trying to put on. So I hope if you're listening, guys, and you're a bit sick of us doing that, I hope that you do understand we're doing it for the right reasons, and are pretty bullish on the fact that things are going to get better.
Well, you're a lot more positive than I am most of the time. I'm sort of the other side of the coin half the time. So
Bit of
you
the
got to
yin,
have both. You got to
bit
have
of
both
the
angles.
yin to the yang, eh?
Yeah. Not about being positive, but probably looking at things from a black and white lens rather than you seeing things of all shades of grey.
Try to add a bit of nuance, mate. Let's move on. Getting a bit long in the tooth, and this Sunday at 4:05 p.m. up at McDonald Jones Stadium in Newcastle, we play the Knights, a very beatable team. Obviously, it's Monday when we're recording this, so the team list for us is a rarity. Are not out. We're probably going to forget a couple. Any changes you expect? For me, I'm thinking obviously Latu's gone. Twal, a big chance to be out. I'm going to suspect that Pole is probably out for a few weeks if he's back at all with a busted rib, depending on how bad that is. We might see Luke Lelele come back into contention as he gets off his head knock situation, maybe in for Alamalo, and maybe Dewey, with Olam being suspended, comes back in to a centre after having a few weeks rest on his knee. He copped a knock a few weeks back and it swollen up a bit, so I think they're playing that pretty safe. Mate, anybody on miss? Any likely selections that we should expect to see in the side that's named today as the pod comes out?
No, not really. I think it's probably exactly what we kind of expect. Those that are out, we know who's going to replace them. I'm just looking at the game on the weekend with the Knights game, and I just want to have a quick look at something. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how long is Best out for. I know he did a hammy.
Did he do it on the weekend or is he back?
No, he did it the week before because Dylan Lucas played in the centres.
Okay. Sidebar, I actually rate Dylan Lucas from the Knights. I think he's a real goer. I'd be interested to see what his contract situation is. Yeah, my assumption would be it would still be out. If it was the week before last, a hamstring, even a minor hamstring strain, especially with someone who's top shelf like Besk, and he's one of their weapons, and I think he's just re-signed for a while. I don't think you risk him. I don't know that they're really in the hunt anymore. They're starting to drop off a little bit. And so maybe they do, but yeah, it's hard to say. My suspicion is that they won't. We haven't had the best run against the Knights of late. I think they've won the last 5 straight, which doesn't make for pretty reading, but that's basically everybody that's played us recently. So take that with a grain of salt. Mate, against the Knights on the weekend, firstly, is that a game we can win? I say yes.
I say yes.
So, Ponga aside, how do we go about beating Newcastle? I'll be honest, I haven't watched a heap of their games this year.
No, it's just interesting that the one guy who left us because he didn't want to play lock played lock in reserve grade last week, which is pretty funny.
He also left us because the Knights offered him, get this, something over 700,000 a year to play halfback.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's up towards 8 is what I read last week. So we know that we take those with a grain of salt, but they're never going to be double the figure. So I didn't know that they'd sign him for that much, but you understand why he shot through, don't you?
Yeah. So I think they don't like. You know what Gamble does? Gamble's just a pest. Has been forever. How long he's played? He played for us, and he was a pest.
So we're expecting their halves being Cogger and Gamble. Is that what they ran out with on the weekend?
No, they ran out with Crossland and
Gamble. Okay. So Cogger's out of favour there, is he?
Well, he came on as 14.
Oh, he did play 14. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
No worries.
So, yeah. Look, to beat them, I think it's just, if we can complete and we can cut out the silly mistakes, I think we can beat them. I don't think they have too much of a threat other than Ponga. So if you shut down Ponga, Pommer. If you shut down Ponga's thinking time and sort of smother him a little bit, they go to pieces a little bit. Gagai loves to play us. I think Gagai usually has a good game against us, but yeah, I think if we do our things right and we just do a bit of smothering in terms of Ponga, I think we're going to go a long way into winning that game.
Newcastle at Newcastle is often hard, regardless of where they are. They played pretty well against Penrith on the weekend, and it took a bit of a Nathan Cleary masterclass to sort of put them to bed. The Knights are still a pretty tough and grinding side. Like it's hard for you to just really run over the top of them. I don't know, like you said, short of Ponga, whether they have class across the field that can get them over the line in all situations. But look, bottom line, they're doing a bit better than us. For me, I just want to see us take that same approach that we played against the Cowboys on the weekend. And I'm talking with the ball, not without the ball. A different approach without the ball would be good. Maybe a bit of a tighter approach when we don't have the footy. Moving the football around, bodies in motion, offloads, playing back against the grain, cut out balls, all that sort of stuff. I want to see us playing some attacking football. I think the best way to get the Knights is to come out and play a lot of early football and get them behind the scoreboard if you can. Try to take a few chances because they strike me as a very grinding side, as I mentioned before. And I don't know that they're going to respond particularly well to trying to chase points for an entire game. Obviously, every game, if you could jump out to a lead, so be it. But I would be aiming to go out and play a lot of football in the first 20 and try to see if we can get ourselves up and ahead. And then maybe just see if we can get into the grind beyond that and maybe see if we can get them to self-implode a little bit as they do make that attempt to sort of force a few points and whatnot. But it's hard to say.
Yeah, I honestly just feel it just comes down to us. Like, if we can control our end, everything else will fall into place.
And it sort of feels that way. And I was saying earlier in the show that we've played well probably twice this year, where you come away from a game and go, we played really well that game. So we don't really have a metric on what well looks like outside of those two games. If we show up and we play well with the side that we've got, which will be an okay side, I know we're missing a few, but it'll be okay. We're probably every chance of beating them. The problem is we just don't show up and play well this year. Every single game, discipline hurts us. Every single game, we make dumb mistakes. Every single game, there's a try or two from just a simple miss rather than something structurally wrong. So, look, we can only hope that over the last 4 games that we're going to get that right again, but the recent form would tell us that's probably not the case. Mate, very briefly, give us a score prediction and a bold prediction.
Score prediction, I think we'll come away with the win. I'm going to go different than what I have recently, where I was going to be, we're going to win convincingly. I think it's going to be tight. It's going to be 20-16. And I think bold prediction is, I reckon Caesar's going to play out of his skin in his return because he's got a contract to play for.
Okay. All right. I'm going to say it's going to be a battle of the forwards. I'm going to say we're going to lose a tight one, 24-22, goal kicking again. And I'm going to say it's basically going to be the Saifides against Stefan Klemmer. And we're going to see 3. My bold prediction is 4 forwards will score in the game. So I think that the Knights, I don't know what the weather's doing down there. The Knights, as we said before, they've got a bit of class at the back in Ponga, but I think they're going to try to go through the middle. And I think that with where our back stocks are at the moment as well, and we spoke about how well, obviously, Buller played and how Galvin's going, I think we're going to have to try to resort to some simplistic plays to get a few points. So that's my prediction. Close loss and a forward dominant game from both sides getting on the score sheet.
I don't like it, but okay.
I hope I'm wrong, as I always do when I predict us to lose. All right, mate. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up the show there?
No.
Okay. Mate, Spotify, YouTube, Apple, Instagram, and Facebook is where you'll find us. Tiger Town Podcast. Give us a follow, give us a like, give us some comments or whatever you want in regards to what you think of the pod. Give us a bit of feedback as well. Been getting feedback left, right, and centre. Bit of negative feedback on the weekend, which was fine. We engage in that and we learn from it, and we'll move on.
We haven't had a lot of F-bombs lately, so that's fucking good.
Yeah, we haven't. We've been reining it back. We started this show trying to be very child friendly, so maybe we need to revisit our roots in that regard.
No,
We're
fuck
not big
that.
curses at the best of times, but yeah, I'm going to just ignore what you just said.
Ha.
Positive, negative, it's all good, and it helps the show be better. And we're trying to, produce a show that people enjoy. But remember, this is just two blokes having a yarn, and sometimes you'll agree, sometimes you won't agree. But we're happy to have everybody listening and following along. So thank you very much, as always, to everybody who even bothers to tune in. We're humbled every single week, and I'm not just saying that. It's still remarkable to us that we have people that enjoy listening to us rabble on about a useless side that we love so dearly. So thank you, everybody, once again. West Tigers Media, we always recommend. Now, West Tigers Podcast is one that we can't fault. Everybody over involved in that organisation does a beautiful job and a wonderful job, and I'm looking forward to we get down to Sydney, so maybe we could have a beer with a couple of them as well. Now, we've been plugging the West Tigers Faithful podcast of late. I've just noticed they haven't been putting out shows in the last month or so. I think that one or two of their merry men are off and gallivanting around. If you happen to find them, if they happen to pop up new shows, we can vouch they are good, but I can't say whether or not they're still putting media out, but see how we go. That's the West Tigers Faithful podcast. Thanks as always to our supporters and our sponsors in Best on Ground Digital, bestongrounddigital.com. Anything digital marketing related, they will sort you out. They sorted us out with Apple. We're still in debt to them. So thank you to the guys at bestongrounddigital.com. Mate, Sunday afternoon. Fortunately, we don't have to go to work after a loss on a Thursday like we did last week. I didn't particularly enjoy that, and it seemed like it's been a long time since
Don't you work Mondays?
The game took place. Yeah, you know what I mean.
No, it's the exact same.
Okay, well, what I was going to work on a Friday and then having to sit through the whole weekend without the opportunity or the hope that your team might go back. You get the point.
Okay.
Anyway.
No.
Not much fun. Thursday games. You get it over and done with, I guess, but yeah, goodness me. Seems like an eon ago. But this Sunday should be good, 4 p.m. time slot. Hopefully the boys turn up. That's all we're doing at the back end of this year. Everybody out there, you're a little bit tired of silver linings and promises and all that sort of stuff as well, but keep the faith and keep looking for silver linings. I know we're going to do it. Jump on in, add your lift and sink for this week. Let us know how you feel. And as always, Toad, go the mighty West Tigers.
Up the Tigers.